Most people see the frontman as just another masked villain in Squid Game, enforcing the rules and keeping the deadly competition running. But what if I told you he's actually one of the most legally responsible people in the entire game? Look closely, and you'll see that the frontman isn't just following orders. He's calling the shots. He oversees the executions, silences anyone who gets too close to the truth, and ensures the deadly system keeps running smoothly. But here's where things get interesting. If the frontman was arrested and put on trial, how long would he actually spend in prison? Would he be treated like a foot soldier, just carrying out orders? Or would he be charged as the mastermind behind one of the most horrific mass killings in history? Let's break it down. And trust me, the reality is much worse than you think. At first glance, the frontman seems like nothing more than an enforcer, carrying out the host's orders and ensuring the Squid Game runs smoothly. But if you look closely, he's much more than that. He's actually one of the key figures keeping the entire operation alive. Think about it. He doesn't just enforce the rules. He orchestrates every execution, eliminates threats, and ensures secrecy. When Detective Hwang Jun-ho infiltrates the island, the frontman doesn't hesitate to hunt him down and personally pull the trigger, even though it's his own brother. That's not just following orders, that's full commitment to the cause. So, if law enforcement uncovered Squid Game and arrested him, how would they treat his crimes? Would he be considered just another pawn in the game, or would he be held accountable for every single death under his watch? In South Korea, laws on murder, kidnapping, and organized crime are extremely strict. If the frontman was put on trial, his prison sentence could be worse than we think, maybe even a death sentence. But how would the courts actually determine his fate? Let's take a closer look at his crimes and break it all down. When you think about the criminals in Squid Game, the guards or the masked VIPs might immediately come to mind. But did you realize that the frontman actually bears direct responsibility for nearly every crime committed inside the games? Let's dig deeper to see exactly what he's guilty of and why he would face the harshest penalties imaginable. Did you notice how easily the frontman kills people who get in his way? He personally shoots and presumably kills Detective Hwang Jun-ho, his own brother, without hesitation. Beyond that, he directly oversees the execution of hundreds of eliminated contestants, each one considered murder under South Korean law. According to Article 250 of South Korea's Criminal Act, murder carries a minimum of 10 years in prison, with life imprisonment or the death penalty possible for multiple murders or premeditated killings. Considering that the frontman personally ordered and oversaw countless executions, prosecutors would likely push for the harshest possible penalties, life imprisonment or capital punishment. Did you notice that contestants aren't simply invited? They're kidnapped and brought to a remote island. Each contestant is drugged, transported, and detained against their will. Actions that clearly constitute kidnapping under Article 288 of the South Korean Criminal Act. Kidnapping alone is punishable by at least 5 years in prison, increasing to life imprisonment if any victim is harmed or dies. Because the frontman directly oversees the transportation and imprisonment of hundreds of people, he could be charged with hundreds of counts of kidnapping, easily resulting in multiple life sentences. Here's the part most viewers overlook. The entire game is a human trafficking operation. Contestants are sold as entertainment to wealthy VIPs, making the frontman directly responsible for human trafficking for exploitation, punishable by life imprisonment in South Korea. On top of that, the frontman leads a highly organized criminal enterprise, one designed solely to exploit and murder innocent people for profit. This makes him liable under South Korea's organized crime laws, potentially adding decades to his sentence. Clearly, the frontman's list of crimes would make him one of the most notorious criminals in history. Now that we've broken down the frontman's crimes, the big question remains: how long would he actually serve in prison? Let's analyze his sentencing based on aggravating and mitigating factors, because while his crimes are extreme, there are some arguments that could slightly impact his final punishment. Certain factors could increase the frontman's sentence to the maximum possible punishment. Multiple murders. Courts treat serial and mass murderers with the harshest penalties. The fact that the frontman orchestrated and ordered the deaths of hundreds of people makes him a prime candidate for life imprisonment or the death penalty. Premeditation. Every death in Squid Game is part of a planned, systematic operation, meaning the frontman isn't guilty of just spur-of-the-moment killings. He's guilty of organized mass murder. Position of authority. Courts typically give harsher sentences to criminals who abuse positions of power to commit crimes. As the game's enforcer, he actively controlled who lived and died. Lack of remorse. Did you notice how cold and calculated the frontman is? He doesn't hesitate to kill his own brother, showing zero emotional resistance. Judges are much less likely to show leniency toward emotionless, remorseless killers. With all of these factors, the frontman would almost certainly receive either multiple life sentences or execution. Could anything reduce the frontman's sentence? Let's look at a few possible defenses. Coercion and duress. If the frontman could argue that he was forced into his position and threatened by the game's creators, a court might show some leniency. However, there's no evidence that he was unwilling. He seems fully dedicated to running the games. Psychological manipulation. Having once been a contestant himself, the frontman could claim he was brainwashed into loyalty. While this might reduce his sentence slightly, it wouldn't spare him from decades in prison. Cooperation with authorities. If he turned against the VIPs or the host, he might receive a reduced sentence, but given his level of involvement, he would never escape prison entirely. Even in the best-case scenario, the frontman would spend the rest of his life behind bars. So, after breaking down the frontman's crimes, it's clear, he wouldn't just get a slap on the wrist. He'd be one of the most heavily sentenced criminals in history. With multiple murder charges, mass kidnapping, and human trafficking under his belt, South Korean courts wouldn't hold back. Given the aggravating factors, his premeditation, abuse of power, and lack of remorse, he would likely receive multiple life sentences or even the death penalty. The only possible way he could reduce his sentence would be by testifying against the game's masterminds. But even then, his best-case scenario would still be decades in prison with no hope of freedom. This raises a question for Squid Game fans. Do you think the frontman actually deserves a second chance, or is his fate sealed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this breakdown interesting, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden details of Squid Game. Thanks for watching. Until next time.